right now, let's dive into some hoops. Welcome Tony on the show. Tony, good evening.
Good evening to you, fellas.
I want to look ahead to Marshall just a little bit, but let's start recapping last night. And I feel like a broken record when I ask you this. So another convincing win for the Mountaineers. What can we take away, if anything, from the lopsided win last night?
Oh, boy. I don't know, to be quite honest with you at this point. I mean, I think it's always good when you're able to make shots from three-point range. It was a tightly packed 2-3 zone, and West Virginia made 15 threes, which is a gargantuan number over a long period of time. It's been a long time since West Virginia had 15 three-point shots. But again, tightly packed zone, and so I don't know exactly how much you can pull from that other than when left alone, West Virginia can set up and make some shots. Obviously, you're going to play more athletic teams here in the not-too-distant future. They're going to come out and get you a little bit more. So it's good that they can and got that little bounce of confidence. Some of these numbers are just crazy numbers. You take a look at West Virginia gets 40 or 39 more shots. No, not more, not 39. No, let's see, 40 plus 83.
41. Yeah, 41.
41 more shots.
Yeah.
41 more shots at the goal. I mean, that's you can't make that stuff up like if you're playing on Xbox. You can't get 41 more shots at the goal. Rebounding, you had one less offensive rebound than Louisiana Monroe had total rebounds in the game. Mm-hmm. Turnovers, West Virginia is able to feast on those to the tune of 35 of its 100 points coming off of turnovers. So I think they're whacked out numbers, and I don't know exactly how much you can take from it, to be quite honest with you. How about that for a really long answer?
No, and I think you're right on that. And those are the numbers we talked about. Remember how often last year we said, here's your key points. You need to out-rebound. You need to force turnovers. What's the turnover number and points off turnovers? And then how many more shots does West Virginia get than its opponent? And if those things come out in the positive and to a significant amount, it was generally a win. But I'll go back to the shooting. And I know you're not going to get 15 threes every night, but to see Carter, Miles, and Page each drop down 4 threes, and let's specifically talk Javon Carter because he was kind of the story coming off that Virginia game when he was benched after the attempted behind-the-back pass, did not see the floor the rest of the game. Clearly, message sent, message received. He came out and was ready to go last night.
Yeah, he did. And here's the deal, man. He's a good player, right? Mm-hmm. He did have a struggle there against Virginia, but that's the exception rather than it is the rule. Mm-hmm. I just truly feel in Javon's case that we have to remember he's still a sophomore playing in the first month of his sophomore season. So to think he's going to be a finished product at this point is not realistic. I think that he is learning and growing into the new role that he's playing on this team. The positive side to all of that is that he is a very good player, and he's going to be an extremely good college basketball player throughout his career. He's going to end his career here with impressive numbers, okay? But he's still, and you've got to give him the benefit here to mature into this new position. I think yesterday was a positive step for him. I think he's starting to realize after the struggle that he had at the Garden and then coming back and working very hard to have a good game, I think that he now is realizing what it's taking. And I think for some people it takes that. I think Daxter Miles is in that same world. And there's a couple of other guys on this team that are still in a learning mode as to what's required to win on a regular basis at this level. This is going to be a heck of a league that we're getting ready to play into. I mean, there is no gimmies. People had written off, Kansas State for dead this season. That's not developing the way people thought. We don't need to say anything about Baylor, Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa State. Those are all challenges. So this is going to be really hard. So you get what you can get right now, and you just hope that you're learning what it's going to take to win night in and night out.
We're always going to talk about the backcourt when they make the 15 threes that you guys mentioned. Devin Williams got his 12 and 10, another double-double. But some of the other guys, because I think we can kind of expect teams to kind of look at that Virginia game and say, let's make these guys make shots. But some of those other forwards, the Nate Adrian, Elijah Macon, Jonathan Holton, and Ahmad, what do those guys need to do to step up and provide some offense?
Well, I think that Issa is one of those guys that is very much, he's in the similar type of a role that Javon is, in that he is still very much learning, but Javon's got a year head start on him. I just think when you watch Issa Ahmad handle the ball, just watch his flow and his play and his passing, you see that he's kind of like the unfinished star. And how dominant he becomes, I don't know, but he just knows how to play, and just the way that he handles it. And I think that every single moment that he's out there, he's just getting a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And I think his offense will come. But to think, Goose, at this point that he's going to go out there and get you double figures, night in and night out in the league, I don't think that's in the cards, in the foreseeable future. Maybe later in the season, midpoint February on, hopefully he'll get to a point where he's so comfortable that he's scoring. Jonathan Holton, I mean, we've seen enough of him over the last year and a month. We know what he is. He's a basket finisher guy. He's an energy guy. He's a rebounder. That's what he is. He can go out there and sit and take those three-point shots all day, and he's going to hit one, every once in a while. That's not his game. He's an under-the-basket guy who's been doing a much better job, to his credit, of not getting himself in foul trouble. And Nate, same kind of thing. I think that the position that he's been forced to play in here now takes away a little bit of what he was offensively. He's still, not the offensive player that he showed us that he was in his freshman season. Whether or not that comes back or not, I don't know. It's just, I think it's more in Nate's head at this point. He's got to get some shots to go down. He needs to be more demonstrative. He needs to be more selfish, to be quite honest with you, to get his offensive game going.
Flip to the other end of the court figuratively there, and let's talk defense for a minute. Where do you think this press is under year two in the system, and so many of these guys coming back for their second year? Still a ways to go, or getting close to where it needs to be?
I think the press is better than it was a year ago. I don't necessarily think they're defending as well as they did a year ago. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I think that it's making me a little bit concerned. I think that guys are getting some easy. So I think some teams are getting some easy baskets against us, and that's got to get better. And whether it does or not remains to be seen. Now, I say that, and it's kind of, someone might be laughing at me, considering that West Virginia is currently number one in the Big 12 in scoring defense. They're number one right now in scoring margin. But I just think that they can be better. Here's why. Field goal percentage defense. West Virginia is 8th in the Big 12. So teams are shooting almost 41% against them, okay? So what that's telling you, in my opinion, is that the teams that they've been playing, right, aren't necessarily great teams to this point.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of Louisiana Monroes on this schedule. And when you jump into the league, those numbers will cycle through. Now, three-point field goal percentage, I think that can be a strong point. West Virginia, how about this stat? West Virginia's only allowed 32 three-point shots against them in 9 games, right?
Wait, say that again?
They've only allowed 32 threes the whole season.
Goodness.
Opposing teams are 32 of 143. They're shooting 22% from three-point range. That's not even close. I mean, the second lowest number of threes against an opposing team is 44. That's Oklahoma. So that's a nice stat. Rebounding right now, West Virginia's number 3. Rebounding defense, West Virginia's number 2. Rebounding margin, West Virginia's number 2, only to Baylor, and they've got, gathers in that group. The numbers right now, steals, obviously West Virginia's number 1, 12 a game compared to 8 of number 2 Kansas. Turnover margin, you're number 1 in the league. Offensive rebounds, you're number 1. Defensive rebounds, you're number 10 out of all 10 schools in the Big 12 conference. So there's some things that you look at, but I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. I question our defense after what happened against Virginia. I'm hoping that was just a one-night aberration, more so than the sign of a big problem.
Yeah, I'm with you on that part of it. All right, looking ahead, you mentioned upcoming schedule. So we have plenty of time to talk about this, but I want to dive in just a little bit. Marshall coming up, Capital Classic on Thursday. Just give us a quick look ahead to that game coming up.
Well, they were the bad news Bears for the first 6 games. They were 0-6. Got beat. The one common opponent was James Madison. The Dukes beat them 89-75. That was the one common opponent so far. And then they lost again twice to James Madison, 107-84. West Virginia obviously handled JMU pretty easily there in Charleston, but after losing their first 6 games, Marshall comes up and gets hot. They beat Eastern Illinois 82-76, and then they fired it up this weekend and beat Eastern Kentucky 96-72. I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew a whole lot about Eastern Kentucky. They got a new coach this season. Jeff Neubauer is gone. Like West Virginia, Marshall hit 15 three-pointers in that game. I know that Eastern Kentucky presses, and Marshall handled it well. Only turned the ball over 14 times, shot 51 from the field, 47 from 3. So, as they say, when two teams get together like this, you can throw the record books out the window. I don't know whoever said that, but that's what they say. But, if history tells us anything, normally the game's, closer than people expect.
Oh, that's certainly one thing that we've gotten to know over the years. There's always seems to be every time this year the politics come in with this game, and even more so here in the last couple years with Dan D'Antoni kind of stoking the flames, and even WVU coach Bob Huggins chiming in. A lot of West Virginia people seem to want this game to go away. I personally am in favor of playing it. I like playing it in Charleston. Is this thing going to go away soon?
That's a good question. I asked that question to Billy Hahn last week, who's in charge of the WVU schedule, and he said, that's a question you can ask Coach Huggins. So I think that there is a possibility that this game could go away, to be honest with you. I do think that. Whether it will or not, whether this is the last one, I'm not sure, but I think if Huggs had his way, it would not be played.
Interesting.
Yep.
All right. One last thing before we go. You want to reveal your Heisman votes? Do you do that?
Sure.
Talk about that?
I use a guy on my Heisman votes with me who watches a lot of college football. He stares at 4 screens every Saturday and watches a lot more games than I actually get the chance to watch. So we hit the winner.
So collectively, you came up with what?
So collectively, you and I came up with Derrick Henry as our first pick. We stroked that one.
Yep.
We got McCaffrey in the 2 spot.
Yep.
And we fanned. We went Baker Mayfield as our third pick, and he didn't even get the invite to New York. And I could see, with the Clemson deal in the season that they've had, why they went that way. So 2 out of 3 isn't bad.
2 out of 3. Mayfield finished 4th, and you know what they always say? There was some talk about they didn't invite enough guys. People were up in arms, invite 5, but they always tell you it's the break in the voting that determines how many they invite.
Yeah, and it was pretty.
It was a giant gap
large
between Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield. And as we said, Deshaun Watson's certainly worthy. The challenge is which of those guys do you take out if you're going to put one in? I just thought from our perspective, and you agreed that we saw Baker Mayfield a lot and was worthy of being in that position. So otherwise, both of those top 2 guys, just fantastic seasons, and it certainly sets up a heck of a race next year with Mayfield returning, Watson back, McCaffrey's back, Fournette's back. You don't think Derrick Henry will be back, but you've got some guys heading into next year. Dalvin Cook is back. So, okay, good stuff. All right, we'll let you run. Thanks for the time, and we'll talk some more Marshall hoops tomorrow when you're back.
Deals. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Tone.